she thought the bear was stalking her cabin. Alone in the snow, with her food running out, she braced for the worst. But when the animal finally appeared, the wind screamed across the ridgeline like a living thing, tearing at her coat and forcing icy needles of snow against her face. Her name was Claire Donovan, a 28-year-old field researcher who had been sent to monitor the late-season conditions in the mountains. What had begun as a routine check had turned into a nightmare. The storm had moved in faster than anyone predicted. The radio forecast had warned of light flurries, maybe a stiff wind, nothing more. But now, caught miles from her cabin, Claire was trapped in a blizzard that seemed determined to bury her alive. She stumbled along the trail, or what she thought was the trail, her boots sinking deep into drifts that seemed to grow taller by the minute. The familiar landmarks were gone, swallowed by the white void. Every breath burned in her lungs. Her gloves, soaked through, clung uselessly to her fingers. She hugged her arms to her chest, trying to keep her body heat from bleeding out into the storm. "Just keep moving," she whispered, though her lips were so numb she barely felt the words form. One step, then another. But her steps were slowing. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity. She had no sense of direction anymore, north, south, it didn't matter. The world had become a swirling chaos of snow and shrieking wind. Fear began to claw at the back of her mind. She knew the statistics: hypothermia could set in quickly, disorientation followed by collapse. If she didn't find shelter soon, she wouldn't last the night. Her legs buckled, and she fell to her knees. The snow was soft, almost inviting, and for a moment the thought of lying down seemed peaceful. She could rest. Just for a second. But something inside her screamed to get up. She forced her body forward, crawling on hands and knees through the drifts. Her breath came in ragged sobs, and tears froze to her lashes. And then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. It was faint at first, carried on the wind, a low, guttural rumble. Claire froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She strained to listen. There it was again, louder this time. A growl. Panic surged through her. She knew that sound. She had studied the signs in her research, read countless reports from rangers and trappers. Bears. Even in the dead of winter, some could be active if disturbed from their dens. Her eyes darted wildly, searching through the snowblind night. Shapes swirled in and out of the white haze, shadows that might have been rocks or trees, or something alive. The growl came again, closer. Claire's breath hitched. She forced herself upright, swaying on unsteady legs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she knew better. You couldn't outrun a bear. Not in this weather, not anywhere. "Please," she whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was pleading with. "Not now, not here." The storm seemed to answer with another blast of icy wind, driving her back. She stumbled against a fallen tree half buried in the snow. Her eyes flicked upward, and there, through the swirling white, she saw it. A massive shape moving slowly toward her. At first it was just a blur, but as it drew closer, the outline became unmistakable: broad shoulders, a lumbering gait, a head lowered against the wind. A bear. Claire's body locked with terror. Her frozen hands clawed for anything she could use as protection, but there was nothing, just snow, rocks, and her useless, trembling limbs. The bear stopped a dozen yards away, its dark eyes fixed on her through the blizzard. For a long moment they simply stared at one another, woman and beast, both stranded in the fury of the storm. Claire's chest tightened. She thought of the stories she'd read, hikers mauled, campers dragged from their tents. She thought of her parents, of the little cabin she might never see again. The bear took a step forward. Snow crunched beneath its massive paws. Claire gasped, her breath catching in her throat. She wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but her body refused to move. Another step. Closer now. Its fur rippled under the snow, its size even greater than she imagined. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed against the tree. The storm howled around them, but all she could hear was the pounding of her heart. The bear lowered its head, sniffing the air. Claire squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the end. And then, something happened. Instead of charging, the bear stopped. It stood perfectly still, only a few feet away, its breath steaming in the frozen air. Slowly, it shifted its massive body, turning slightly, as if blocking the wind from her. Claire opened her eyes in disbelief. The bear wasn't attacking. It was standing guard? She couldn't understand it. Every instinct told her she was prey, but something about the bear's posture, the way it held its ground, it didn't feel like a predator closing in. The storm roared louder, forcing her to bury her face into her arm. When she looked up again, the bear was closer, so close she could see the snowflakes clinging to its fur, the dark, wet shine of its nose. And then, to her horror and wonder, it made a sound, not a growl, not a snarl, but something softer. A low, resonant huff that almost sounded like a sigh. Her lips trembled. What do you want?" she whispered, though her voice was nearly swallowed by the storm. The bear's head tilted slightly, as though it were listening. Claire's heart pounded. Fear wrestled with confusion. And deep inside her chest, something else flickered, a fragile, impossible hope. The storm was growing worse. If she stayed out here, she would die. And now, impossibly, she was face to face with the one creature she thought would end her life, and yet it hadn't. The bear took one slow step forward. Claire sucked in a breath. Was it leading her somewhere? Or was this the moment everything ended? The bear's breath fogged in the frozen air, each exhale a heavy cloud that seemed to merge with the storm itself. Claire could barely feel her fingers anymore, but every nerve in her body was alive with adrenaline. She pressed her back harder against the fallen tree, as if a few inches of frozen wood could protect her. The bear's eyes fixed on her, unblinking. It took another step forward. Snow shifted beneath its weight, the sound sharp and deliberate, even through the screaming wind. Claire's body wanted to crumple, but her mind was racing. She thought of the safety manuals, the ranger lectures, the endless notes in her research journals. Don't run. Don't scream. Make yourself big. But how could she make herself anything but small, half buried in snow, trembling like a cornered rabbit? Stay back, she whispered, though she knew the animal couldn't understand. The bear didn't lunge. It didn't roar. Instead, it lowered itself slightly, dropping onto all fours in a slow, deliberate motion. Claire's breath hitched. For a second she thought this was the moment, the charge, the final blur before teeth and claws. But it didn't come. The bear settled in the snow, its massive body turning just enough that its back was angled against the wind. Its fur bristled with frost, the flakes settling into ridges and valleys of thick muscle. And suddenly Claire realized it was shielding her. Just as it had a moment ago. Her mind struggled to process the sight. Was she hallucinating? Was this some last trick of her oxygen-starved brain, creating a mercy dream before death? She hugged herself tighter, her teeth chattering. The bear stayed where it was, a living wall between her fragile body and the fury of the blizzard. For long minutes, neither of them moved. The storm raged on, snow piling higher around Claire's boots, but she no longer felt the sharp edge of the wind. She was sheltered. By a bear? Her lips trembled as she whispered into the storm, "Why are you here?" The bear responded with another low huff, warm vapor streaming from its nose. Its eyes flicked toward the darkness beyond, as if scanning the wilderness for something unseen. Claire shuddered. Was it possible? Could the bear have been following her? The thought made her chest tighten with fear. If it had trailed her through the storm, why hadn't it attacked? She shook her head violently, dismissing the thought. She couldn't afford to believe in fairy tales, not now. This was a wild animal, and wild animals were unpredictable. But the seconds kept stretching, and still, it didn't harm her. Instead, it shifted again, and with a surprising suddenness, it stood. Claire's heart leapt into her throat. The bear's massive shoulders loomed against the storm, its head swinging left and right. And then it began to move. At first, it turned slightly away from her, its body angling into the white void. Then, pausing, it looked back. Claire's eyes widened. The bear's dark gaze locked onto her, then flicked in the direction it had turned, and back again. Her chest tightened. No, it couldn't be. But every second that passed made it harder to deny. The bear was waiting. Her thoughts spun. Was it possible the bear knew where shelter was? That it had a den nearby? She'd read studies of animals using instincts to navigate through impossible conditions, birds, wolves, even elk. But a bear? Her rational side screamed this was madness. Yet what choice did she have? The storm was worsening. Her body was shutting down, her muscles stiffening and clumsy. If she stayed here, she wouldn't last another hour. And the bear? The bear had not harmed her. Not yet. Her teeth chattered as she whispered to herself, if I follow it, maybe it's leading somewhere. But the thought terrified her. If she followed, she might be walking straight into its den and into her own death. Her heart thundered, torn between two horrors, the slow, frozen suffocation of the storm or the claws of the animal before her. The bear huffed again, this time louder, almost impatient. Snow whipped across its massive frame as it took another step forward, then stopped, looking back once more. Claire clenched her fists. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Every instinct screamed she was crossing an invisible line, stepping into the unknown. But if she stayed, she would die here, alone and frozen in the storm. Her boots shifted in the snow. One step. Just one. The bear lifted its head, almost in acknowledgement, and moved forward again. Claire stumbled after it, her legs trembling with each motion. The bear's massive paws carved a path through the drifts, leaving behind deep impressions she could follow. For the first time in hours, she wasn't guessing at the trail. But doubt gnawed at her. Each step away from the fallen tree felt like surrendering her life into the paws of a predator. The snow swallowed her boots, the cold bit into her skin, but her eyes never left the bear's hulking figure in the storm. Minutes blurred together. The storm howled louder, but she pressed forward, always a few paces behind the beast. Its fur bristled with frost, a dark mountain moving steadily through the white void. Then, through the blizzard, Claire saw something strange. The snow ahead seemed different, less chaotic, less wild. She squinted, her heart racing. Was that a break in the storm? The bear paused, lifting its head to sniff the air. It gave another deep huff, then trudged forward. Claire's hope flickered alive, fragile and uncertain. Could it be true? Could the bear actually be leading her somewhere safe? Her lips trembled as she whispered into the wind, "Please, let this be real." The bear picked up its pace. Claire tried to match it, stumbling, her breath ragged. Her legs screamed with exhaustion, but she forced herself forward. And then, she saw it. A dark shape in the snow ahead, half hidden by the swirling blizzard. At first, she thought it was another rock. But as they drew closer, her breath caught. It wasn't a rock. It was an opening. A cave. Claire's knees buckled. A sob escaped her lips. Shelter. Real, solid shelter. The bear moved directly toward it, its massive body almost vanishing into the mouth of the cave. Claire's heart pounded. Relief and dread crashed together inside her chest. Shelter meant safety from the storm. But if that shelter belonged to the bear? She stumbled forward, her body shaking. Her boots crunched in the snow as she reached the mouth of the cave. The bear stood just inside, its eyes glowing faintly in the dimness. It waited. Claire's breath hitched. She gripped the edge of the rock for balance, staring into the darkness where the beast waited. If she stepped inside, there was no turning back. Claire standing at the cave entrance, unsure if stepping inside will save her or doom her. The cave loomed like the mouth of some ancient beast, black and gaping against the storm. The blizzard's howl was muffled here, the air thick and heavy with the scent of damp earth and musk. Claire's heart thundered as she stood at the threshold, her frozen fingers clutching the edge of the rock. Inside, the bear turned its massive head, eyes catching what little light filtered through the storm. For a breathless second, it simply stared at her, steam curling from its nose in long, heavy bursts. Then it shifted deeper into the cave, snow shaking free from its fur as its hulking form disappeared into the shadows. Claire's legs trembled. Every cell in her body screamed not to follow. To linger at the entrance meant freezing to death, but stepping inside could mean teeth and claws in the dark. Her pulse hammered. She whispered to herself, voice hoarse, "It's this, or nothing." With a shuddering breath, she forced her boots forward. One step, then another, until the storm's fury dimmed behind her and the darkness of the cave swallowed her whole. The air was warmer inside, but only barely. Moisture dripped faintly from stone somewhere above. Her eyes strained to adjust, and she pressed her frozen hands against the cave wall, using the rough surface to steady herself. The bear's silhouette loomed a few yards away, massive even crouched low. It exhaled with a sound that seemed to rumble through the stone itself, then settled onto the ground. Claire swallowed hard. The animal was between her and the exit. If it chose, there would be no escape. She lowered herself against the wall, curling her knees to her chest, and tried to breathe slowly. Each inhale burned like ice shards down her throat. The silence stretched. She could hear the storm outside, muted now, like a distant roar. And beneath it, the bear's breathing. Deep. Steady. Heavy enough that she could almost feel it in her chest. Minutes crawled by. Claire's thoughts spun in 1,000 directions. Why hadn't it attacked? Why had it led her here? Was she intruding in its den, or had it truly allowed her to share its shelter? Her research came rushing back, the strange reports, the scattered anecdotes of wild animals showing inexplicable behaviors in extreme conditions. A wolf guiding a lost hiker. A dolphin pushing a drowning sailor to shore. Could this be one of those rare, unexplainable moments? Her body shook with cold and exhaustion. She tried rubbing her hands together, but the sting in her fingers was sharp, almost unbearable. Frostbite was setting in. She needed warmth. Fire. Anything. Her eyes darted to the bear. Its fur was dusted with frost, but beneath, she could imagine the heat radiating from that massive body. The thought made her shiver, with fear as much as need. The idea of moving closer to the beast was unthinkable. But so was the creeping numbness spreading through her arms and legs. The bear shifted suddenly, letting out a low rumble. Claire flinched, her heart lurching. But it didn't move toward her. Instead, it rolled slightly to one side, stretching out its massive limbs before resettling. The cave filled with the sound of its breathing again, steady and unhurried. Claire pressed her forehead to her knees, whispering through chattering teeth, "I can't. I can't survive this." Her eyes stung with tears, but she forced them shut. Somewhere in the blur of exhaustion and fear, she drifted into a shallow, restless daze. A sound jolted her awake. Not the storm. Not the bear. Something else. Her eyes shot open. At first she thought it was her imagination, a faint crack from deeper inside the cave. Then another. The scrape of stone against stone. Her chest tightened. She turned her head, squinting into the blackness beyond the bear. The shadows shifted, unfamiliar, alive. Her breath hitched. They weren't alone. Claire's pulse roared in her ears. She froze, listening. The sound came again, a shuffle, low and deliberate, deeper in the darkness. The bear stirred, lifting its head. Its ears twitched, its nose flaring as it sniffed the air. Claire's heart sank. Whatever was out there, the bear had sensed it too. The animal rose to its feet, its massive frame blotting out the faint light at the cave mouth. Its body stiffened, muscles coiled with tension. A growl built in its throat, deep and resonant, vibrating through the stone walls. Claire pressed herself harder against the rock, terror gripping her. If another predator lurked inside, a mountain lion, wolves, she was trapped between one danger and another. The bear let out a booming roar, the sound shaking the cave. The echoes rolled like thunder. From the darkness, the sound came again, louder this time. A rock clattered across the stone floor, bouncing toward Claire's feet. Her body went rigid. Her breath caught in her chest. The bear advanced a step into the blackness, its growl deepening into something primal. Claire's trembling hands covered her mouth. Something was coming out of the darkness. The cave air seemed to thicken, pressing in on Claire's chest until every breath was a struggle. The sound was unmistakable now, claws or hooves scraping stone, echoing low and steady. Her frozen fingers dug into the cave wall, trying to anchor herself in place. The bear stood rigid in the center, muscles rippling beneath its thick coat, a living barrier between her and the darkness beyond. Another rock clattered, bouncing closer this time. Claire flinched, her heart slamming against her ribs. She tried to steady her breath, but the icy air caught in her throat like knives. The bear let out another roar, deafening, furious. The sound shook loose dust and pebbles from the cave ceiling. Its jaws split wide, showing teeth yellowed and massive, each one longer than her finger. For a moment, silence. Then, movement. Something shifted from the shadows, low to the ground. Claire's eyes widened as her vision adjusted to the dim light. Not one figure, but several. Wolves. 3 of them, their eyes glowing faintly as they stalked forward. Their coats were ragged with hunger, ribs showing beneath thick fur. Driven to desperation by the storm, they had followed the scent of warmth and shelter into the cave. Claire's stomach dropped. Wolves rarely attacked humans, but starving wolves were another matter. And if they sensed weakness, if they smelled her fear, she'd be an easy target. The bear took another step forward, blocking their advance. It let out a guttural rumble that rolled through the cave like thunder. The wolves paused, teeth bared, hackles raised. Their eyes flicked between the massive animal and the small, trembling woman against the wall. Claire's pulse raced. She pressed herself tighter into the rock, fighting the urge to scream. The cave was no longer a refuge. It had become a trap. The wolves fanned out, spreading in a semicircle. 2 to the left, 1 to the right. Claire's throat tightened as she realized their strategy. They weren't only challenging the bear. They were trying to flank. The bear's head swung left, then right, tracking their movements. It didn't back down. Instead, it rose onto its hind legs with a bone-rattling roar, towering against the cave ceiling, its silhouette massive and terrible. Claire's ears rang from the sound. For an instant, even the storm outside seemed muted. The wolves froze, snarling, torn between instinct and fear. Then, the largest lunged. It happened in a blur. The wolf leapt, teeth flashing in the dimness. The bear swung with one colossal paw, the impact cracking through the cave like a gunshot. The wolf hit the stone wall and crumpled, yelping in pain before scrambling back, limping. Claire's eyes went wide. She had studied bears, read their strength described in numbers and comparisons, but nothing had prepared her for the raw, explosive power of what she had just witnessed. The other 2 wolves hesitated, snarls faltering. The bear dropped back onto all fours, muscles quivering with tension. It roared again, deeper this time, its entire body vibrating with fury. The wolves paced, tails low, torn between hunger and survival. The storm outside howled louder, the wind slamming against the cave mouth like a battering ram. Claire's nails dug into her palms. She wanted them gone. She wanted this over. Every nerve in her body screamed that she was one mistake away from death. The wounded wolf whimpered, its body low to the ground. The others shifted nervously, ears pinned back. For a heartbeat, Claire thought they might retreat. But then, the smallest darted forward, aiming not for the bear, but for her. Claire screamed. Her voice tore through the cave, high and raw. The wolf lunged, jaws wide, eyes burning with hunger. The bear moved faster than she thought possible. With a thunderous snarl, it lunged sideways, intercepting the wolf midair. They collided in a tangle of fur and claws, rolling across the cave floor. Claire scrambled back, her hands slipping on wet stone. The sound of snapping jaws and tearing claws filled the air. The bear's massive weight crushed down, pinning the wolf, but the animal writhed, snapping at its thick fur. The other wolves barked and growled, circling, waiting for an opening. Claire's breath came in ragged gasps. She had no weapon, no defense. All she could do was pray the bear could hold them back. With a violent shake, the bear hurled the wolf aside. It landed in a heap, scrambling to its feet before limping toward the entrance. The others hesitated, snarls faltering as their eyes flicked between the massive, bloodied bear and their injured packmate. The bear stood tall, chest heaving, saliva dripping from its jaws. It growled low, a sound that shook the walls. One by one, the wolves retreated. Slowly at first, then faster, until the storm swallowed them whole. Silence. Claire's entire body trembled. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The bear remained standing, sides heaving with exhaustion, eyes locked on the mouth of the cave. The storm roared outside, but inside, the only sound was the echo of her own heartbeat. The bear turned its head slowly toward her. Snowflakes clung to its fur, blood smeared faintly across one shoulder from the fight. Its eyes met hers, not wild, not feral, but steady. Claire's breath caught. She realized what had just happened. The bear hadn't only defended its den. It had defended her. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Gratitude, disbelief, fear, all tangled in her chest. The bear exhaled heavily and lowered itself back to the ground, resettling near the center of the cave. Its posture was calm now, almost deliberate. Claire's arms wrapped tighter around her knees. She stared at the massive beast, her mind spinning. It could have let the wolves take her. It could have walked away. Instead, it had fought for her. Her eyes stung with tears she couldn't explain. She pressed her face against her sleeve, whispering into the dark, "Why are you helping me?" The bear gave no answer, only a slow, steady breath. But Claire knew this night was far from over. The cave was heavy with silence after the wolves fled, broken only by the low rumble of the storm outside. Claire sat pressed against the wall, arms still wrapped around her knees, staring at the bear's massive shape in the dimness. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Every muscle in her body trembled, not just from the cold, but from the raw terror of what she had just witnessed. The bear shifted slightly, settling onto its belly. Its flanks rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths, the sound resonant in the hollow chamber. Snow clung to its fur, melting in places where the heat of its body pushed through. A dark patch stained one shoulder where a wolf's teeth had torn the skin, but the wound seemed shallow compared to the beast's size. Claire's throat tightened. She couldn't stop replaying the moment, the wolf lunging for her, jaws open wide, and the bear intercepting it with impossible speed. She had been one heartbeat away from death, and the only reason she still breathed was the very creature she had feared most. Her rational mind spun. It didn't make sense. Bears didn't protect humans. They defended themselves, their young, their territory. But this was something else. Her lips parted, the words trembling out into the cave, "You saved me." The bear's head shifted slightly, ears twitching, but it gave no other sign of hearing. Its eyes half closed, not with aggression, but with the slow calm of an animal at rest. Claire's heartbeat slowed just enough for exhaustion to flood in. The adrenaline that had kept her upright drained away, leaving her limbs heavy and clumsy. She rubbed her numb hands together, hissing at the pins and needles stabbing through her fingers. She needed warmth. If she didn't find a way to raise her body temperature soon, the wolves wouldn't matter. Hypothermia would take her before dawn. Her gaze drifted to the bear again. It lay only a few feet away, a mountain of muscle and fur radiating visible heat into the frigid cave air. She swallowed hard. The thought came unbidden, terrifying and absurd, if she could just get closer. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face. "No," she whispered. "That's insane." And yet, she glanced at her trembling fingers, at the way her legs ached with creeping numbness. Her body was shutting down, no matter how much she fought it. She pulled her knees tighter, trying to squeeze what little heat she could from herself. But it wasn't enough. Each shiver rattled harder than the last. The bear's steady breathing filled the silence. It shifted once, curling slightly, as if settling deeper into rest. Its thick coat rippled with emotion, and Claire could almost feel the warmth radiating from it, even from where she sat. Her chest tightened with fear and desperation. She thought of the stories she had read, of indigenous hunters who spoke of surviving nights in the wild by curling beside their dogs, their horses, even their prey. Heat was heat, no matter the source. But this wasn't a dog. This was a bear. Her pulse hammered. She whispered into the dark, as though to convince herself, if I don't do something, I'll die here. Her legs shifted beneath her, boots scraping against stone. The sound was soft, but the bear's head lifted instantly. Its dark eyes opened, locking on her. Claire froze. She didn't breathe, didn't blink. The bear's ears twitched, and for a long, suffocating second, neither of them moved. Then the bear lowered its head again, resting its muzzle against its paws. Its eyes remained half open, watching her. Claire's breath caught. It wasn't asleep. It was aware. Always aware. Her lips trembled. Slowly, cautiously, she edged a little closer, each shuffle of her boots echoing louder than thunder in her ears. Her body shook with fear, but the cold pressed harder than the terror now. She stopped just outside of arm's reach, her back still against the wall. The bear's steady breath sent faint wisps of condensation into the cold air between them. Minutes stretched. Claire hugged her knees, staring into the dark, her entire body trembling with exhaustion. The bear did not move. Finally, driven by instinct more than thought, she slid closer again. Just a foot. Then another. Until she could feel the heat rising off its fur like a fire pit. Her breath stuttered. She hesitated, then leaned slightly toward the warmth. The bear huffed, a low exhale that rattled through her bones. Her chest seized with fear. She pressed herself still, waiting for claws, for teeth, for the end. But it never came. Instead, the bear shifted slightly, angling its massive body so that its shoulder faced her. Almost as if accommodating. Claire's eyes filled with tears she didn't understand. She inched closer, the warmth wrapping around her like a fragile blanket. For the first time since the storm began, she felt her shivers begin to ease. Her head rested lightly against her knees. Her eyelids sagged. The exhaustion was unbearable now, pulling her under. Before sleep claimed her, she whispered into the darkness, voice trembling, "Please don't kill me." The bear's ear twitched. It let out a deep, rumbling breath, steady and calm. Claire's eyes closed. The storm roared outside, wolves howled faintly in the distance, but in the heart of the cave, against all reason, human and bear shared warmth through the night. Claire woke to silence. For the first disorienting moment, she thought she was still dreaming. The thunder had stopped, the howling wind no longer rattled through the cave mouth. All that remained was the muffled drip of melting snow and the slow rhythm of breathing beside her. Her eyes fluttered open. The first thing she saw was fur. A dense wall of coarse, brown hair filled her vision, so close she could see the tiny beads of frost clinging to it. Heat radiated from the bear's body, still pressed only a foot away from her. Her chest seized with a silent gasp. Memories surged back, the wolves, the storm, the impossible choice she'd made to inch closer, to let herself rely on the one creature she should have feared most. And yet, she was alive. Her fingers flexed stiffly, testing her hands. They burned with the ache of returning circulation. Her body still trembled with exhaustion, but the sharp edge of freezing cold had dulled. Without that warmth, she might not have survived until morning. She sat very still, afraid to disturb the fragile peace. The bear's chest rose and fell with deep, steady breaths. Its eyes were closed, its muzzle resting against its forelegs. It looked peaceful. Claire's throat tightened. "You kept me alive," she whispered, so faint she wasn't sure she had actually spoken aloud. The bear stirred. Its ears twitched, and one dark eye cracked open. Claire froze. Her pulse raced so loud she thought the animal must hear it. The bear huffed softly, then, to her shock, shifted again. Not toward her, not in aggression. It pushed its massive frame into a stretch, muscles rippling beneath its fur, then rose to its feet in a slow, deliberate motion. Snow dust shook from its coat, scattering across the cave floor. It was only then that Claire realized how enormous it truly was. Standing, the bear's back nearly reached her shoulder even as she sat. Every instinct screamed at her to shrink away, to make herself smaller, invisible. But the bear didn't lunge. It padded a few steps toward the cave's opening, each footfall heavy but unhurried. Claire followed with her eyes, watching as the morning light spilled across the snow outside. The storm had passed. The world beyond was buried in white, glittering beneath a pale sky. For the first time in hours, she felt a fragile surge of hope. She was still lost, but the worst had passed. Her stomach growled violently, shattering the moment. The sound was humiliatingly loud in the quiet cave. The bear stopped. Its head swiveled, dark eyes landing on her. Claire's face flushed with panic. She clutched her stomach as if she could silence it. I didn't mean. The bear snorted, a sharp burst of air that startled her. Then, without warning, it lumbered out into the snow. Claire's heart leapt into her throat. Her only source of warmth, her unlikely protector, was leaving. She staggered to her feet, dizzy from the sudden motion. Wait. The word burst out before she could stop it, absurd and desperate. The bear paused at the cave mouth, snow swirling around its massive shape. It glanced back once, ears twitching. Then it stepped into the blinding white beyond. Claire's chest tightened with fear. She had no idea if it was abandoning her, or if it would return. All she knew was that she couldn't last long on her own. Minutes dragged. Her body shook again, the cold creeping back in without the animal's heat. She clenched her fists, pacing the small cave like a caged animal. And then, a sound. Crunching footsteps in the snow. Heavy, deliberate. Claire froze. Her eyes darted to the entrance just as the bear reappeared. Its fur bristled with frost, muzzle dusted white. And in its jaws, dangling limp, was a half-frozen hair. Claire's breath caught. She staggered back, equal parts fear and disbelief. The bear dropped the animal onto the ground with a wet thud. It gave a low grunt, as though the matter was finished, then sat back on its haunches. Claire stared, wide-eyed. Her mind spun. It hadn't just left, it had hunted. And it had brought the catch back to her. Her throat tightened painfully. She crouched, hands trembling as she reached toward the hare. Her fingers brushed the stiff fur, the icy body. She hesitated, then glanced back at the bear. It watched her, calm, silent, unblinking. Her heart hammered. "You brought this for me?" The words hung in the cold air, absurd, impossible. But there it was. A gift. A lifeline. Claire's stomach growled again, and she realized her choice was simple: accept what the bear had given, or risk starving in the wilderness. She swallowed hard, pulling the hare closer. Her eyes burned with gratitude and terror in equal measure. For the first time, she whispered, not out of fear, but something closer to reverence. "Maybe I don't have to be alone." But as she reached for the pocket knife in her coat to prepare the hare, the bear shifted suddenly, rising to its full height once more. Its ears pricked, head turning sharply toward the snowfields outside. Claire froze, knife halfway drawn. A new sound cut through the morning air, faint, distant, but undeniable. Voices. Human voices. Claire's pulse hammered in her ears. She wasn't imagining it, voices drifted faintly through the morning air, muffled by the snow but unmistakably human. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Rescue. Civilization. A way out. She stumbled to her feet, heart racing. Over here, she tried to shout, but her throat cracked from dryness, the words coming out hoarse and weak. She coughed, then forced it louder, help. I'm here. The bear's reaction was immediate. It swung its massive head toward her, then back toward the sound. Its ears flicked nervously, muscles tensing beneath its thick coat. Claire froze, realization crashing in. To her, those voices meant salvation. To the bear, they meant danger. Hunters. She pressed a hand to her chest, torn between hope and dread. If they were a search party, she was saved. If they were poachers, the bear was as good as dead. Snow crunched louder outside. Shadows moved between the pines, faint outlines approaching the cave. The bear let out a low, guttural growl. The sound vibrated through the stone walls, primal and unrelenting. Claire's stomach lurched. No, she whispered, stepping forward, hand raised instinctively. Don't. Please. Her own desperation startled her. She had spent the night trembling in fear of this beast, and now she was begging it not to charge into the open. A voice rang out, clearer now. Male. Rough. Tracks this way. Claire's chest clenched. Footsteps pounded closer, deliberate, heavy. The bear moved to the cave mouth, blocking the light. Its sheer size filled the opening, a wall of muscle and fur. It stood like a guardian, but to the men outside it would look like nothing but a target. Claire's breath caught. She lunged forward, gripping a handful of its fur without thinking. The coarse strands bit into her palm. Please, she whispered urgently, her voice breaking. If you go out there, they'll kill you. The bear stilled. Its massive body quivered with restrained tension, claws digging faint grooves into the snow. For one unbearable second, it seemed to listen. The voices came closer. Do you see that? The cave, something's inside. Claire's heart raced. They were seconds away from seeing the bear. She had no weapon, no plan, nothing but her own voice. She scrambled toward the mouth, standing beside the beast though her knees shook violently. Raising her arms, she shouted, I'm here. Please, don't shoot. Her voice echoed out into the white expanse. The shadows stopped. Silence fell. Then one voice, hesitant, Claire. Her chest tightened painfully. Someone knew her name. Yes, she cried. It's me. The crunch of boots resumed, slower this time. 3 figures emerged from the trees, their shapes distinct now against the snow, 2 men and a woman, bundled in heavy coats, rifles slung across their backs. Relief surged hot in Claire's chest. Search party. They had been looking for her. But then she caught the way their eyes widened, their hands shifting toward their weapons as they spotted the hulking figure beside her. The bear growled low, the sound rumbling like distant thunder. Claire's instinct screamed. She flung out her arms, shielding the bear with her body. Her voice cracked against the frozen air, don't. He saved my life. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. The searchers froze mid-step, baffled. One man squinted, lowering his rifle slightly. What are you talking about? It's a bear. I know what it is. Claire's voice was ragged with desperation. But it protected me. If it wasn't for him, I'd be dead right now. The bear shifted behind her, its hot breath misting against the side of her face. Its sheer presence was terrifying, but Claire refused to move. The searchers exchanged looks, disbelief plain in their eyes. The woman spoke this time, softer, cautious. "Claire, step away from it. Slowly. We'll handle it." Claire shook her head violently. "No. If you shoot him, you'll have to shoot me too." The silence that followed was suffocating. Snow drifted lazily between them, each flake glinting in the pale light. The bear remained still, looming like a shadow behind her. Claire's body trembled, but her voice steadied with a conviction she didn't know she had. "This bear is not the enemy. He's the reason I'm alive." The men hesitated. One lowered his rifle a fraction, uncertainty in his eyes. The other's jaw tightened, finger brushing the trigger guard. The woman lifted her hand slowly, urging calm. "All right, Claire. Tell us what happened. But do it quick, before he changes his mind about you." Claire opened her mouth to speak, but before she could explain, a sharp crack split the air. A rifle shot. Not from the search party. From somewhere deeper in the trees. The snow near the bear's paw exploded in a puff of white. The bear roared, ears flattening, muscles coiling. Claire screamed, "No," as the beast surged forward. The crack of the rifle still echoed through the trees when the bear roared, a sound so raw and thunderous it shook the cave walls behind Claire. She stumbled back, clutching at her ears. The ground seemed to tremble beneath her boots as the beast surged forward, snow scattering under its massive paws. "Hold your fire," the woman from the search party shouted, dropping to one knee. Her eyes darted toward the treeline, scanning for the source of the shot. But the bear wasn't waiting. Its bulk barreled into the open, head swinging, teeth bared in fury. Claire's heart lurched. She lunged after it without thinking, her boots sinking deep into the snow. "Stop. Please." Another shot rang out. The report cracked the air, followed by the sickening thud of a bullet striking flesh. The bear staggered. Snow sprayed as its front paw slipped, but it didn't fall. Instead, it roared again, louder, enraged, charging toward the sound of the gunfire. "Hunters," one of the men from the search party barked, raising his rifle. "They're after the bear." Claire's throat tightened, her scream tearing out raw, "Don't shoot him." The searchers hesitated, caught between protecting her and protecting themselves. From the trees, two figures emerged, men in heavy camouflage, rifles raised, eyes hard. "Hunters." Claire's stomach turned to ice. One spat into the snow. "Get out of the way, girl. That bear's ours." Claire's chest heaved. "No," she shouted, planting herself in the snow between the hunters and the bear's massive form. "He saved me. You can't." The bear staggered back into view, fur along its shoulder matted with fresh blood. Steam rose from its breath, its eyes burning with a mixture of pain and rage. The hunters didn't flinch. One leveled his rifle squarely at its chest. Claire's body moved before her mind caught up. She sprinted forward, throwing herself into the line of fire. "Stop." The hunter cursed, lowering his weapon at the last second. "Are you insane? That thing'll kill you." "He won't." Claire screamed back, voice cracking. "You don't understand, he protected me. If you kill him, you kill the only reason I'm still standing here." Behind her, the bear loosed another guttural growl, but this one was different, less fury, more warning. Its eyes stayed fixed on the hunters, but its body leaned subtly toward her, as if holding the line. The search party shifted uneasily, weapons still in hand. The woman kept her voice low but urgent, "Claire, you need to move. We can't hold this standoff forever. But Claire didn't move. She stood rooted in the snow, chest heaving, every nerve alight with terror and resolve. The hunters' faces twisted with frustration. You think that thing cares about you, one snapped. The second it's done with you, you're meat. Get out of the way before it's too late. Claire's eyes burned with tears, her voice breaking as she shouted, You weren't there. You didn't see what he did. He saved me from the wolves. He kept me alive through the night. He brought me food. The words echoed across the frozen clearing, desperate and raw. For the first time, the hunters faltered. Confusion flickered across their faces, disbelief mingling with doubt. And in that hesitation, the bear moved. It stepped forward, massive head lowering, blood dripping from its wound into the snow. It didn't charge. It didn't roar. It simply placed itself closer to Claire, towering at her side, a living wall of muscle and fur. Claire's breath caught. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold still. The message was clear. The bear wasn't attacking her. It was standing with her. The hunters tightened their grips on their rifles, snarling in frustration. Last chance, girl, one hissed. Step aside. Claire swallowed hard, fear clawing at her throat. She knew she couldn't fight them. She was defenseless against guns, against men with no hesitation to kill. But she also knew one thing with certainty, if she moved, the bear would die. And she couldn't let that happen. Her voice rang out, hoarse but unyielding, Then you'll have to go through me. The hunter cursed, jerking his rifle up again. The bear roared, surging forward in an explosion of snow and fury. Gunshots erupted, deafening in the frozen air. The world shattered into sound and fury. Gunfire cracked through the frozen air, sharp and merciless. Muzzle flashes lit the snow like lightning. The bear barreled forward, a living avalanche of muscle and rage. Claire dropped flat, the wind of its passing whipping over her as it surged into the line of bullets. Snow erupted around its paws, scarlet blooming where rounds tore through fur and flesh. It didn't stop. With a roar that shook the trees, the bear slammed into the first hunter. The man barely had time to scream before the beast's massive paw swatted his rifle away, the weapon vanishing into the drifts. The hunter tumbled backward, breath knocked from his body as the bear loomed over him, teeth bared. No! Claire screamed, scrambling to her knees. Her voice cut raw against the chaos. Don't kill him. The bear's jaws snapped inches from the man's face, a warning, not a death blow. Then it turned, wheeling toward the second hunter. That man had already taken aim again, rifle trembling against his shoulder. Drop it, one of the search party shouted, too late. The shot rang out. The bear jerked sideways with a pained roar, blood spraying across the snow. Still it lunged, teeth clamping down on the rifle's barrel with bone-crushing force. Metal groaned and snapped. The hunter cried out, falling backward as the weapon was torn from his grip and flung aside like a twig. Claire scrambled through the snow toward them, her hands raised, her voice breaking with desperation. Stop. All of you, stop. The bear staggered, sides heaving, blood streaking its fur. Steam rose from its body in thick clouds, hot breath pumping like a furnace. Its eyes, dark and unyielding, flicked between the hunters, the searchers, and finally, her. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that look. It wasn't wild fury anymore. It was a question. A plea. What do we do now? Claire's throat closed. Her body trembled so hard she could barely stand, but she forced herself between the bear and the hunters once more. Arms spread wide, her scream cut through the storm's fading silence. Enough. The hunters froze. The searchers held their rifles at half-raise, torn between fear and awe. The snowfield lay littered with discarded weapons, red stains marking where bullets had torn flesh, human and beast alike. The bear panted heavily, blood dripping from its wounds, but it didn't advance. It stood behind Claire, massive and defiant, its shadow engulfing her as though it had chosen its place. One hunter scrambled to his knees, fury burning in his eyes. "You're insane. That monster doesn't care about you. The second you turn your back." Claire cut him off, voice raw but steady. "He had every chance to kill me." "He didn't. He had every chance to kill you, and he stopped. Can't you see? He's not what you think he is." The hunter's mouth twisted, but doubt flickered across his face. The woman from the search party spoke next, softer, eyes fixed on Claire. "Then what is he?" Claire's lips trembled. She turned, looking up at the towering beast behind her. Snow clung to its fur, blood streaked its hide, but its eyes, those deep, dark eyes, watched her with something she could only describe as recognition. Her chest ached as she whispered, almost to herself, "He's the reason I'm alive." The clearing fell silent. The hunters breathed hard, snowflakes drifting past their sweat-slicked faces. The searchers lowered their rifles inch by inch, uncertainty tugging at their instincts. And in the midst of it, Claire reached out. Slowly. Her fingers hovered just inches from the bear's fur. She had touched him only once before, in panic, grabbing his coat to stop him from charging. This time was different. This time it was choice. Her hand pressed lightly against his side. His fur was coarse and thick beneath her trembling palm. Heat radiated into her skin, steady and grounding. The bear huffed, low and deep, but didn't move away. Tears blurred her vision. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please. Don't make me lose him too." The words hit harder than the gunfire. The hunters stared, jaws tight, but their rifles stayed lowered. The searchers exchanged weighted glances. The silence stretched unbearably, broken only by the ragged breaths of man and beast alike. Then, a new sound cut through the clearing. Distant at first, then closer. Engines. Snowmobiles. More people were coming. Claire's stomach dropped. Reinforcements. And with them, more rifles, more eyes, more danger. The bear shifted uneasily, ears pricking, body tense. Claire's pulse surged with dread. Whatever fragile balance she had found here, it was about to collapse. And this time, she might not be able to stop it. Engines roared closer, their growl tearing across the frozen silence. The beams of headlights pierced through the storm, slicing across the blood-stained snow. Claire's chest tightened. Reinforcements. More rifles. More suspicion. More death. The bear shifted uneasily beside her, its massive chest heaving with each labored breath. Blood streaked its fur, but its stance remained unbroken. Towering, protective, unyielding. "They'll kill him," Claire whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Her voice trembled, but her body stood firm, shielded by nothing but faith. The hunters saw it too. One leaned toward the other, his voice sharp. "We can't let that beast walk out of here alive." Claire spun, her voice rising like a whip. "If you shoot him, you'll have to shoot me first." The headlights flooded the clearing now, engines growling to a halt. Snowmobiles cut off, leaving an eerie silence. Boots crunched as figures emerged from the tree line, more men, rifles slung, faces hard. But among them walked an older man, weathered face marked with years in the wilderness. His eyes scanned the scene, the discarded rifles, the wounded bear, Claire standing with her hand pressed against its side. "What's going on here?" his voice carried, calm but firm. The hunters opened their mouths, anger spilling out. "That bear attacked us." "No." Claire's voice split the air. "He saved me." All eyes turned to her. Her body trembled, but she held nothing back. "When the storm hit, I should have died out there. I was lost, frozen, half dead. He found me. He led me to shelter. He never once hurt me. Every step, every moment, he chose not to. And when you fired on him, he spared you too. If you can't see that, then maybe you're more dangerous than he'll ever be." The clearing fell into tense silence. Breath steamed in the bitter air. Snowflakes drifted gently, softening the edges of blood and gunpowder. The older man studied her, and then the bear. His expression shifted, not to fear, but to something deeper. Recognition. Respect. Finally, he nodded once. "Stand down." The rifles lowered. The hunters snarled but didn't argue. The searchers exhaled in shaky relief. Claire felt her knees buckle, the adrenaline flooding out of her body. She pressed harder against the bear, her hand steadying herself as much as it soothed him. His fur bristled, but his great head lowered, eyes half-lidded from exhaustion. She whispered softly, only for him, "It's over. You're safe now." The bear's breath rumbled deep, warm against her shoulder. For a heartbeat, it felt like an answer. The storm broke with dawn. Pale light stretched across the mountains, golden against the snow. The chaos of the night, the gunfire, the fear, the screams, all of it faded beneath the quiet beauty of morning. Claire stood in that light, her figure small against the towering presence beside her. Man and beast, bound not by fear, but by survival. By choice. The searchers guided the wounded hunters away. Engines roared to life again, fading back down the trail. But Claire didn't move. She stayed with him. Her fingers traced his fur one last time, memorizing the warmth, the strength, the truth of him. He turned his head, eyes meeting hers with that same unreadable depth, wild, unbroken, yet tethered by something she couldn't explain. And then, slowly, he turned away. His massive frame lumbered back into the trees, fading into the wilderness that had birthed him. Snow fell heavier now, cloaking his tracks almost instantly. Within moments, he was gone. Claire stood frozen, tears slipping hot down her cold-reddened cheeks. She felt both shattered and whole. Alone, yet not. Because she knew she hadn't just survived. She had been chosen. The bear had given her life back. And in return, she had given him trust. Long after his form disappeared into the forest, Claire whispered into the silence, a vow more than words. "I'll never forget you." The video closes on the quiet stillness of dawn. The storm has passed, but the bond remains. Out there in the wilderness, survival is rarely about strength alone. Sometimes, it's about trust. About choosing not to harm when it would be easier to destroy. Claire survived the storm because of a bear, and perhaps the bear survived because of her. What would you have done if you were the one standing in the snow? If you want more stories like this, raw, human, and wild, subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive.